because we bonded through that fighting and argument. And we also understood how, you know, we were all so committed.
Yeah. And sorry, carry on, but I want to throw in as well.
Yeah, go on.
What do you think, what do you feel in that experience? Was it, because it can go along different pathways. It can be that you bond, that it becomes a community glue almost, the heat, or it can be that people get frustrated and they they think it's not worth it, and they get a regular job, and that's kind of get normalized and so on. And what were there any qualities that you could identify that were there? And I'm going to kind of name something that I heard at a permaculture gathering, where I can't remember the name of this woman, but she's quite involved with the development of intentional communities, of eco communities, and lives in one herself. And she said that one of the principles that they would have in their community would be, we don't run away from conflict, so it's not a reason to escape, it's a reason to stay, and to face and to feel the discomfort and so on. And what was there anything you can identify in your group, in your organization, that led to that connection?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really big question, Muzammal, and I would sort of say that, personally, when I was coming to this group, there were lots of areas inside of me that were very frightened of conflict. And I desperately wanted to run away many, many times, actually. And there were many times when I wanted to cry, and many times when I did cry. But I was also really angry, and I was very proud. I didn't want to be humiliated. And so there was an interaction between the personal and, what I was wanting to achieve. And I think what helped us all was a degree of honesty around all of that. So even though I'm saying this now with hindsight, I think that the whole situation was one in which, I think there was an implicit understanding that we all personally wanted to be empowered, and therefore we supported each other, whilst also being in conflict. And, there was a lot of love in that, and a sense of, us against the world, which was very bonding. And I think there was a reality to that. Because, the world was and is and can be a very difficult and damaging and hard place to be in when you're different. So there was a recognition, I think, of what we were giving to each other, and an appreciation of that. I think that was really important, I mean, we used to joke about how there were ley lines kind of underneath the building, and, all of that. And I think, we also, I think we were also organizationally, we also were given a lot of freedom to work things out. And that was really helpful. I mean, partly because, it was a sort of very idealistic mission on the part of the sort of board of trustees. But I think also they were a bit scared of us, and so they left us alone.
Yeah, a group that bonds through conflict, that is scary to hierarchies.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and we had consultants coming in to help us with our conflict.
Oh, good.
and
Yeah.
we destroyed them. We actually destroyed them because they were kind of coming in without an understanding of issues around diversity, and I guess that power and intensity and anger that we felt, we kind of lash out.
Yeah.
And so
Amazing.
that was the out group. But I mean, going back to your question of what the tips are, I think also that I'm slightly looking back with rose-colored spectacles, but because there was difficult conflict that did not get resolved. There were things that made us separate. There were people who got lost along the way. There were huge challenges that we were experiencing personally that kind of came into work. And I think part of what I'd say, if I take off those rose-colored spectacles, is that, in the end, it actually was okay. In the end, I would sort of say, maybe this is just my personal experience and what I see in Abdullah. I think that, those experiences were sort of part of a bigger tapestry that we couldn't see at the time. And I guess my tip would be, to understand that, whatever you're doing in the moment is incredibly important, and it's your life and it's here and now, but it's also not the only thing that there is. There is a bigger story going on that perhaps you're not seeing at that time. And that it's okay to kind of, it's okay if somebody is so angry and walks out and there's a huge conflict and it destroys the whole organization even. It happens, and you see these cycles over time. And I think it comes down to maybe, and this is perhaps where the spiritual aspect comes in, it comes down to, well, what is the actual project? What is the actual project? Is it that initiative that you've got going on at the time, or that value that you're trying to embody and fight for? Or is it the deeper process that is going on in your heart and that you want to manifest? In other words, maybe the project is you and your consciousness and the opportunity that life gives in each moment and at each stage of your development. I don't want to sound too kind of happy clappy, but I think there is a truth to that. Like, it's not actually about the thing maybe on the outside. It's
and that truth, which is like, conveyed through religious texts and through prophets and teachers and so on, is something we can grasp intellectually, or maybe we can grasp when we look back in time. And then in the moment, there's the reality of our experience and what we're feeling. And you touched on emotion, you named anger and so forth. And I don't know if now is the right moment, but I'd definitely like for us to sort of explore the experience of emotions and the kinds of emotions that we can experience, and I guess the cultural context, how we might frame those emotions and relate to them, because of whatever our conditioning is, and in particular, within kind of Muslim cultural conditioning, how that affects our relationship with our inner experiences. And yet, what is Islamic spirituality, or the Islamic counselling model in relation to that? We're told, don't get angry, and you were experiencing the emotion of anger. And I was on a call, on a panel a few months ago, where we're talking about the experience of hope and despair, and this was with a Muslim audience online, and someone wrote in the chat box that despair is from the devil. And I'm just wondering, your thoughts on these messages, because you must come across this sort of thing and a lot more. And what do we say to Muslims or to anyone who's experiencing an emotion which, in their conditioning, where there's beliefs that they hold, that this is something that is from an evil source, or this is something that is negative, that they shouldn't be experiencing, that they shouldn't be expressing in some way, they should push down, and so forth. And the reality of life is that we have so many experiences, and it's as you use the word tapestry, there's a vast tapestry of inner experiences and emotions that we may feel. And I just like to hear a bit about what you might say to someone who's experiencing an emotion or a range of emotions that is perhaps overwhelming, and that they might feel they shouldn't be experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, if I can focus on what you sort of said about anger to start with. As you sort of said, like a lot of our teachings which speak about, not getting angry. And I find that, many of my clients are very frightened of being angry because of that. They've been conditioned that it's wrong. But the consequence of that means that they're not able to access the strength and empowerment that anger can give. And often with clients, they have been victimized by the anger of bullies or abusers or people in powerful positions who've used that, kind of quietist attitude to damage further that person, that client. And then also that client then oppresses themselves. They experience an internalized oppression. Well, I'm not allowed, I should be quiet. And the way that I work with people is I give permission for that anger, because there are a number of teachings in Islam that actually do allow for you to be angry. One is that, you have to take care of your own heart and your own self. And, we have very clear teachings that say that death is better than oppression, for example. That's, in other words, Allah is saying to us how serious oppression is. Because oppression kills your spirit, so you need to fight to get out of that. And sometimes the way that you have to fight is not pretty, right? And also those teachings about not getting angry are in the context of people who would just let rip with their anger, and who just allow themselves to kind of be damaging of other people because of their anger. So those messages are really for those people, and we all have, I'm saying those people, but we all have those people inside of us in a way. We all have that potential to let our anger ride us. And in Islamic teachings, this is really where that speak around, those kind of dangerous emotions. And we know that anger can be really dangerous. You know, you can get to allow yourself such rage that you actually lash out, maybe verbally, maybe physically, and hurt and destroy people and things. And that's where those teachings are sort of saying, you know, like, don't do that. Sit, you know, like if you're standing, sit down, you know.
And I guess there's also, I mean, I know in my own work in the field where there's a distinction made between an emotion and behavior. And, you know, there's one thing is to lash out, you know, or to be violent, you know, and there's another to feel in the body the experience of an emotion. And I'm not sure that's often, that kind of distinction is often appreciated within certainly my Muslim upbringing. And had it been, you know, that would have been so liberating. It's actually fine to feel it in your body, to feel all these things. And that would have given me a more conscious relationship from the start. It's something I had to develop later in adult life. And it's still a journey, you know, it's still a journey. And yeah, and so, yeah, it's that kind of distinction between behavior and the feeling of an emotion. And, you know, I guess there's often a need for behavior as well, to take some action as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that out, and if you want to sort of respond to that in any way, then
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Like, there is a distinction between what you feel in your body and behavior, but also, like, one of the exercises that I do with, you know, Islamic counselling students who are on training is to sort of, you know, ask, like, well, why does Allah give us emotions? You know, why have we been given them? They're absolutely crucial monitors and markers and developers, and, you know, they are what makes life rich, you know. And I wouldn't want to be a person without anger. You know, and I, you know, as I was sort of saying before, I know personally that, you know, time and time again, my anger's actually saved me from despair. You know, and despair is horrible. Despair is horrible. It's, you know, the opposite of hope, right? And, like, you know, I think one of the things about oppression is that it removes that voice that says you have a right to protest about things that are wrong. And, you know, there's all this sort of tone policing around, like, do it nicely, you know, but it isn't nice.
Yeah.
You know, what happened with George Floyd isn't nice. You can't do it nicely. You know, and so you have to, sometimes you have to rage, and you're supposed to rage about things that are wrong, especially when they're institutionalized in society. Because when they're institutionalized in society, there's always this heavy weight that is saying to you, you know, not just don't feel, but don't be. You know, you're not supposed to be here in this, you know, uneducated, unrefined state. You're being uncivilized. You're being, you know, wrong. You're speaking too loudly. You know, you're not being a good girl, or, you know, you're not being a good immigrant, or, you know, and there's so much risk attendant on that.
And there's you know, what I'm hearing in that is also the dimension of power hierarchies and rank that